Welcome, everybody, to another episode of our show here, Boundary Breakers. I'm your host, Piper McLean, and it is great to be back. Shout out to some of our other team members that stepped in while I was away, but I'm thankful to be here having this conversation with the lovely Leslie Harter-Berg, a creative professional whose career path spans an array of roles and achievements. Leslie is the visionary behind Harter Creative, a Vancouver-based video promotion production company, and she co-founded that with her late husband, which is going to be a part of our conversation here today, Ryan Harter. Since the creation in 2014, Harter Creative has become recognized for its engaging video content, collaborating with high-profile clients and more. But she is also the founder of Vids for Wids. So, Leslie, why don't you tell us a little bit about your path and how you kind of got to this position today?
Hi, excited to be here, Piper. My name is Leslie, like she said, and my background is video production. I went to film school, I studied screenwriting, and I was ready to make movies, but I ended up kind of going down a different path after school and ended up getting into children's media where I met Ryan, my first husband. And Ryan and we worked together creating videos for kids, and we were writing partners. And eventually we became a little bit more than coworkers. And we got married, and then we started our business together, Harter Creative, creating commercials for clients and doing our own thing. And it was so fun. But in 2019, we were on a family vacation, Ryan and me and our two kids, which the oldest boy was 3.5, and then Rory, his brother, was a year and a half. And on that trip, Ryan had a sudden random brain aneurysm and stroke. And so I was only 30 years old and I became a widow. And so I dealt with some things I never thought I would have to deal with, like single motherhood and providing for myself, and a lot of grief and figuring out how to survive the day to day. And I decided to keep running Harter Creative without Ryan, and kept going with our business. And a few years down the line, I felt like, I wanted to do something with my story that involves my skill set of making videos and getting creative, but I wanted to help other widows who had experienced something terrible like me. And so I started Vids for Wids, and I started it like a year and a half ago now. So that would have been in 2023. And it's been amazing. I invite other widows to come share their story. I share some of my story. We get a little weird. It's not all sappy and sad. It's about just the hilarious reality that is being a widow, losing your person, and still having to keep it on. So that's what Vids for Wids is all about. And I still do Harder Creative as well.
What a way to turn your experience into a completely different sort of project. And the goal that you're reaching with Vids for Wids is something much deeper than the, commercial realm. So, how does it feel to kind of work through these two different avenues, and what's fulfilling about doing Vids for Wids?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who works in the client world knows that it does get a little draining after a while. You're being, you're trying to create someone else's vision, and there's lots of notes, there's lots of feedback. So what's been exciting about Vidsarwoods is that there is like total creative freedom. It's my own thing, but also it's not about selling something.
Mm.
It's really truly about trying to help people, and it's been so fulfilling having widows come tell their stories. And especially, like, we set up lights, we do a whole studio, and usually people aren't really expecting that. They walk in and I can see on their faces that they instantly feel like, wow, I'm important. My story is important. Yes, I do want people to feel like they are normal, that this happens to a lot of people, that grief and death is just a guaranteed part of the human existence. But I don't want their stories to feel lost in that, like, oh, I'm just another woman whose husband died of cancer. I want them to come and feel like, wow, my story, my experience matters. And so, even more than the feedback I've gotten once the videos are posted and out there, what's been really special is seeing the way that it affects the people that are being interviewed and having them come share their stories, share their insights, and just passing them the mic and saying, you know, what happened to you is a big deal, whether it happened last year, whether it happened 10 years ago, this loss, it's huge. And we want to hear about it. So that's been the most meaningful part of It's for Wits.
Mm-hmm. And I honestly fell in love with that aspect of the work that you do in Vids for Wids and giving a voice and sharing some of that, you know, weight and grief with people that have experienced some of the same things that you have firsthand. So that's why I was so excited when Leslie ended up sending us one of her clips that she does for Bits for Wids. So I'd love to show you guys that. So you kind of get a picture of what she's getting at with this organization.
I'm Leslie. Before the whole world blew up in 2019, my life blew up when my husband suddenly died of a freak, random brain aneurysm and stroke. He was hilarious. This was him.
Other people hide behind the lens. Not me.
He was there and then he was gone. And suddenly I was a widow, a word that I had never really thought about up until that point, unless I was like thinking of like gothic literature and a woman who wore black, or like rom-coms where women just wear their husband's clothes, smell them, and cry all day into them. Suddenly I was a widow and I had two boys, Whit and Rory, ages 3 and 1, and life had handed me a big slice of terrible pie. When tragedy hits, it is so lonely. And yes, I had a community, I had amazing friends, but really the only thing that helped me feel better was talking with other widows and hearing their stories. So that's why I'm making Vids for Wids, because life is still terrible. You still have to eat the stupid pie, so you might as well eat it with your widow friend.
I'm very pregnant in that video. That was like, I had my baby 4 days after I made that.
Oh because my gosh.
I got married again and have a third son.
Yeah.
But that was like extreme nesting energy. The feeling that you have before your baby's going to come, where you just need to get a lot of stuff done. I was like, I want to make these videos already. So I did that. And then I had him 4 days later. So
oh my gosh.
Like, oh.
You know, when I first checked out the clip, I wasn't sure if that was a belly you put on for the video or not, because the acting is just top notch. And no, like, I love the style of it and everything. I feel like it reminds me of that one picture where it's the man and wife on the farm and they're like super stone-faced and he's holding a pitchfork. I don't know if you're...
Oh, yeah.
You know what picture I'm talking about? That's the vibe I feel like I'm getting in the style that you ended up going for this video.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted a vintage look, kind of like an 80s JCPenney family photo to keep it a little bit quirky and nostalgic. So we did fun things like we put nylons over the lens, so it gives everything kind of a glowy look, and then we buy these like cheesy backdrops, and that really makes it look vintage and it's fun.
I think that is a tip that I've never thought of. I'm not, you know, much into videography, even though I've taken the classes and done the things, but I love how that came out. So did your experience in your prior work, whether it was in your education or what you and Ryan worked on at Harter Creative, that kind of allows you to get your messaging across better for Vids for Wits?
Yeah, I mean, I I went to screenwriting school, so I really do filter everything through a screenwriting lens. Like who's our hero? What are they trying to solve? What's getting in their way? So whatever I do, I kind of filter through that lens. But in the commercial world, it's really about how quickly you can communicate a thought. You usually only have 30 seconds, 15
Yeah.
seconds. So I have a lot of practice of just getting to the point as quickly as possible. Now, not as much practice here. So if I start rambling, I have practice in the script writing and then the
Yeah.
editing and all that, getting to the point. And so, yes, that definitely comes into play with Vids for Wids. I don't think people want to watch hours and hours about you telling your story. You got to get to the point. So we try to do that with Vids for Wids.
And I love that you kind of played into this whole vintage sort of marketing for this video, because when I think back to the most persuasive, interesting commercials, they were all from when I was like growing up. Like they all have that nostalgia where you actually like knew all of the commercials, their jingles, what was gonna happen. Like the house hippos in Canada. That was one that
I don't know that one. But
if you've seen it, you would totally remember. But I think that is so interesting when I look at like advertising today and the unskippable ads on YouTube and Netflix and everything. None of them are interesting. So how do you keep something interesting while being informative?
Oh, you mean in the commercial world? You try to get that opening image that really grabs somebody. But like I said, it is a client service world. So I can always come with my big idea, but we're trying to make it work for the client. So at the end of the day, they're paying the money for it. So sometimes I do get to do my big idea, but usually, it's a blend. The best, most successful commercials are the ones that start with the problem that you're solving for. So that makes script writing pretty easy, pitching pretty easy. I just ask clients, what problem are you trying to solve? And right away, you can talk to your customer and be like, bam, do you have this problem? And show the problem in a funny way usually makes it a bit more engaging.
And I think that sense of humor is something that you definitely make use of in your work. And it reminds me of the yellow box tissues that have a sort of symbolic nature and element in your grief support content. So, can you explain why symbols have sort of significance and how it might resonate with an audience?
Yeah, that was a really last minute choice, but I was like, I kind of want to make sure that we have a brand identity, Vids for Wids, before we start. And so whoever comes, I want them to do something. And I want it to symbolize grief and how we cope, because that is really what Vids for Wids is all about. It's like, tell me your story. Tell me how you coped with this loss so that someone else will be like, hey, that happened to me too. And to me, like a box of tissue is the perfect illustration of coping with grief. You use it for your tears. It's something you offer to somebody for comfort. So I was like, oh, let's have fun with that. Let's throw the tissue and have people like throwing them everywhere. And instead of like using them to cry, they're just sort of being playful with grief, which is kind of what we're trying to do with Vids or Wits. I always say like, it's about grief, but let's talk grief, but make it fun,
Yeah. And I love that approach because it is a difficult conversation to kind of bring up. But I think that is something we're trying to destigmatize by making it okay to laugh. And I remember recalling on our original conversation that we had when we met, that was something that you were really trying to get at with your, messaging. So, how best do you think you can go about, shedding light on such a difficult situation?
Yeah, when it comes to the humor part of it, I just think it is a big part of grief. And anybody that has gone through something really bad, they come out of it with sort of a dark sense of humor, right? So now I'll always say things like, well, at least no one died when something bad happened. Like, you might throw something out, and for someone who hasn't gone through something dark, that's sort of like, oh, what? And then you'll find the person in the room that's had another terrible thing happen and they're laughing because it's like they're in on the joke. And so to me, it's like right away when my husband was in the hospital and we just had to take him off life support and he died, I was in a room with my family and we were cracking jokes. And it felt weird. And it was in between crying and laughing.
Yeah.
And then it was like, this feels like maybe it's wrong, but at the same time, this feels like this is life, you know? It is so sad, but there is joy in the middle of it all. And so I think that I would grab books after Ryan died or watch things. And I probably was just reading and watching the wrong things, but everything was so sappy and sentimental. And I had a hard time connecting with that because I was like, I feel really sad, but I don't feel sad 100% of the time. So I was having a hard time relating with that. And so that's why with Victor Woods, I'm like, I just don't want it to be, I want it to be sad and talk about the real stuff. But I don't think that's the entirety of the experience. You know, I want to talk about the weird thing you watched just to get through each day. I want to talk about all of your weird coping mechanisms or you know, just the things that aren't talked about as much as like, yes, there's pain, there's sadness, there's loneliness, but there's also just weird stuff. Like I had a widow come on and she like bought this skeleton at Halloween because she was like, that looks like my dead husband. And so she brought it home and she like named her dead husband. And it's like for anybody else, like what is happening here? But for widows, like that is hilarious. And she did it because she was like, I think it's so funny. This skeleton is like talking and saying weird stuff, and it's totally stuff my husband would say. And so she bought it for Halloween. Her kids thought it was cool. And that's just an example of it's a little weird and it's not the traditional sadness that you might imagine, but that's the real stuff, you know.
And thank you for bringing this up because you mentioned that you felt like it might be wrong to laugh, you know, right after you took your husband, Ryan, off of life support. And, you know, even the story you just shared with the skeleton portraying her dead husband. I feel like a lot of people might experience sorts of shame or am I doing this wrong? Or, you know, should I be going about my grief in a certain way? And what do you think is the stigma around the proper way to grieve?
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge part of my story is the feeling of shame coinciding with the feelings of grief and the feeling like I needed to be experiencing grief in a certain way. And you know, I bring up the stages of grief a lot, which I think are very helpful and they do happen, right? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross created the 5 stages of grief and we use them a lot. But I think the first time after Ryan died, when I thought about them, I was like, oh, I need to get through these. Need to check them off the old list and then I'm going to be okay. But the thing is that even Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she was like, those are never meant to be linear. Those are never meant to be like some steps on a ladder. And like the fact that we want to do that just shows that we're all just trying to like go up and to the right, the American dream. We're trying to accomplish stuff and get to something where really you're often experiencing them all the time. And it's great to have a name for them, but it's like you might experience anger and then all of a sudden you're feeling acceptance and then you're back to denial and then you're bargaining and then you're anger again and acceptance again. It's just like dunk, 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 dunk. And so I think our desire is to, you know, we want to be okay for everybody else and we want to get these bad feelings away. So we feel like we need to perform our grief in a certain way. But really when we learn to just kind of recognize the different stages and how they change and shift and we accept them when they're not maybe following the formula that we want, I feel like it does help you heal and hold your loss in a less complicated way, right? Like in a way that allows you to move forward while still holding the loss with you.
Mm-hmm. And I think that aspect of moving forward and, you know, making kind of a new life and new path with these experiences is something that is definitely hard. But, you know, at the end of the day, we have to keep going, because what's the alternative if you don't do that, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, are there any stories or feedback from those who have engaged with Vids for Wids that have been particularly impactful for you and kind of reinstated why you're doing what you're doing?
I think the most impactful comments or feedback I get is just when people say, wow, I went through the same thing. Because that really is the goal of it. You know, at the beginning of grief, especially, you feel sort of like you are a weirdo. I remember looking around my community and I was like, I'm the only one with no husband, but I have kids, or I'm the only one whose husband's dead. At that time, I didn't know any widows that were my age. And so I was like, you feel like a freak, a weirdo. You feel very alone. And you're going through things that it's hard to connect with your community about because they haven't experienced it. So that I found the greatest comfort, like I said in that video talk, when I talked to other widows, and they were like, oh yeah, 2 weeks in, I just wanted to kiss anybody and everybody, like saying things like that. And then you're like, whoa, I'm not a freak for feeling that way too, for feeling like I don't want anyone but my husband, but at the same time, gosh, I could just like hug a stranger right now. So having that feeling of like, wow, I went through that too. That is why I created Vids for Wids, and doing Vids for Wids and seeing other people, whenever someone says that, or they chime in with their own story, when someone else shares their story and they're like, that's the exact same thing that happened to me. I am like, yes, that's what this is all about. That's why I'm doing it.
I love that. What a good story. I think that this would be a great time to segue into a little bit of a game. So we keep coming back to this theme that, you know, the stories and the moments are those that are going to stay impactful. So one of our lovely team members has put together a little bit of a snapshot of memories, if you will. And let's get right into it. Okay, so how we're going to go through this is we're going to take a look at these slides, and I would love for us to engage in a little bit of a story and experience sharing of something that relates to what we're seeing in this video. And these were some photos and clips that were provided by you. So I would love to hear what your insight was behind some of these, and if anything else comes to your mind about your experience so far in your career, or, you know, anything that you've done, we would love to play into that a little bit. So, what is the story behind this clip? How does this resonate deeply within you, Leslie?
Yes. First of all, this is a very fun game. I saw all these prompts and had fun kind of going through my phone and seeing what I connected with this thought. This is an image of the creek at my current home. My husband, Solomon, my second husband, and we moved here this year. And so around June this year, we left our like suburban life and moved out to 4 acres on a creek. And it has been just the greatest gift to have, like, it's literally peace out here. It's so quiet. You hear the babbling brook. This specific moment was the first time that I came here by myself and was working on writing my book, and kind of for the first time, like really putting out everything of my story and everything that I went through. And I was just in awe of the beauty of nature. And it really was probably one of the most peaceful moments that I've had in a long time.
You know, I think maybe this sounds cheesy, but when you really get your feet down in the ground and feel the earth and like get in the grass, be in the elements, it really does something to you. Like no wonder why there's, so many people that speak about the gifts that you get from nature. Like it's totally true. It's totally true.
Yes, I agree.
You know, that's where my head immediately went. And, whenever things are, getting tense in your life with work, school, stress, relationships, so many things that get that cortisol running and high, there's nothing like just taking a step outside and like seeing that things aren't all going to nowhere. So I think that this is totally a snapshot of that peace that we can always find, if we're blessed enough to look outside and be able to look at something like that. All right. So a take on strength. What is the story behind this, amazing feast you're having?
So this is a clip from Vids for Wids, and it's just a clip of, I did a video where I was like, grief can look like this, crying, or it could look like this, like eating snacks, zoning out on your phone, or it could look like exercising and just like going for it and being super motivated and filling your life with things. So I like this as a take on strength because one of the things, and it's actually the working title of the book that I'm writing, is You're So Strong. And a lot of people would say that to me at the beginning. And to me, I think they would say that because they're looking at me as maybe a future reflection of what they'll have to go through, and they hope that they'll be so strong. So when they say that, I always felt like instead of them saying, wow, you really are strong, I interpreted it as I need to be so strong. Yeah. And so I really did strive to like always have it put together for a while, but I found that all that did was kind of compound a lot of grief and emotions. So I like this take on strength, that sometimes strength looks like phoning it in when you need to. And when the grief is too much, zoning out, like the junk food that keeps you going. I don't think it's like an everyday thing, but I think for someone with my personality, that is like, oh, I always have to pull it together, especially in those first days of grief. I just like invite you to find the strength in chilling out. And so that is why I put this photo.
What an underrated perspective. And I totally understand that need to put it on, not try to, let everything else take over and just power through. But really, that's totally suppression, isn't it? If you're never letting yourself have reprieve, what's going to happen? It's going to be an explosion.
Yeah, exactly.
And, with life these days, everyone has so many different responsibilities and things they need to do that, it's hard for people to step back and take time for themselves when they really need it. No, I only have a runny nose. Like I totally feel like crap, but I'm still going to go into work. That's something that's totally normalized in our society. So I think that you're totally right. We need to sometimes realize when we need to take a step back, find that grounding space.
Ice, blanket, yawn, pillows, calendar. You do need socks.
Yeah.
Okay. This clip definitely needs context. It's a behind the scenes of a musical that I made in 2021. So it had been maybe almost 2 years since Ryan died. And I'm obsessed with musicals. One day, I hope I can make a full feature musical.
Yeah.
My whole life, I'm just always singing show tunes. Very obnoxious. But I was like, I don't know if it's like a midlife crisis or what, but my friends came to town for a month, and in 1 month we wrote a script, we produced a song, we gathered volunteers to be in the cast, and we did like 2 very long shoot days we were up to like 3 a.m. getting shots. And so this is a behind the scenes. We're in my house and I'm like doing the soundtrack to this musical. And that to me is one of the biggest, greatest moments of joy for me, because I am a creator. I mean, whenever I am creating something and it's just for the purpose of creating something, just for the purpose of making magic, that to me is always like the ultimate joy in life.
And, as a, former dancer, dance teacher, getting to see my pieces on stage, that was it. That was so awesome to get to see. And I think this little sneak peek into what is actually going on, behind the screen is so fun, because to me, it just looks like a little bit of wrapping paper on the wall. Put that picture up, put the calendar up, and you're not going to hear everything that the director or the line man, whoever is back there backstage, is actually doing. So much goes into this little clip that we see only from the front.
Yeah.
And if no one else has ever experienced what it's like in the theater, dance, performance realm, there's a whole crew, a whole group of people behind the scenes that you'll never actually get to see that are making the show happen. So shout out to all the backstage people out there.
Yes.
But yeah, I love this clip. Really brought me back to my dance days. And I think humans, not all of us are creative of mind, but being part of creating something is always so crazy to see. It's outer world. It's almost like playing God. So I totally relate to that feeling. Okay, a gesture of support. What do we got going on here?
Oh, okay, this is an image. My friend Alyssa, one of my best friends, she showed up at my house. And this is before I was about to get married to Solomon. Mm-hmm. I still had Ryan's stuff everywhere because I like to push things off until, my hand is forced. And so even though it had been 3 years since he died, I still had like an office that was completely untouched with all this stuff. And then my storage room, I had a closet of his clothes. My storage room was like bursting with his stuff. And so she offered to come over and help me sort through it, which is one of the most overwhelming tasks. And a lot of people wisely nip that in the bud right away and they get through it. But I waited. So it just, every year that went by, it felt more overwhelming. Alyssa showed up with all these Tupperware bins with a label maker, and we went through things closet by closet, box by box, and we got one whole life organized into 12 boxes. And she helped me figure out what to donate, what to give to friends or family, what to toss, what to keep, what would be important for Whit and Rory when they grew up. Just the most daunting task. And just the fact that she showed up and she took initiative and she walked me through it and made it. She was just kept always being like, we'll just do it one thing at a time. And if I got kind of stuck on something, because sometimes I would look at, a letter and like a piece of paper and I would just be frozen. She'd be like, okay, we got to keep moving forward. And she sort of helped me just get it done, because I think it would have taken me just a lifetime. And then I was ready to bring Saul into that space. So I'm just forever grateful for her for that.
Yeah. Another shout out to the label maker too. What would you have done without the label maker? Label makers are always just so helpful.
True.
And I think that this is a task that would take me, I don't think I'd be able to ever do it, because I barely like going through sorting my clothes now. I have way too much clothes now, let alone when I've got, such grief laying on top of the clothes. I don't think I could ever get through that. So, I can't blame you for taking that long. It probably would have taken me even longer. Okay, what do we got up next? A moment where you learned a lesson.
Yes, this is another Vids for Wins video that I made, but the topic wasn't really on this, but I was like, oh, this sums this up because when I was dealing with anger, not that I'm done with that, but when I was having a particularly grief anger, I took a lot of it out on my poor mother. She was always at my house and she was always helping with my kids, doing the laundry. She was there, but she's still like my mom. So she knows how to say those comments. It just send me off. Anyways, she decided after Ryan died to get my 3-year-old a goldfish to care for, and we didn't have any pets. And I was like, what are you doing? This goldfish. And I was so upset having to care for this goldfish. And I was really panicked because they are the hardest pet to keep alive. And she's like, you need to have filtered water and you need to. So I looked through how to care for it, but I wasn't like really functioning super well. This is like 2 weeks after Ryan died.
Yeah.
And so the goldfish did not make it, even though I did the filtered water. And I had to kind of watch this goldfish slowly die. And then I had to talk with my 3-year-old about death again. And I was so angry at my mom. But then when I have like this moment, this epiphany when we were doing the memorial service around the toilet with Wit. And I was like, I'm not angry at my mom. She showed up and she tried to make magic for my kid. And I was like, I think I'm just actually angry at death itself. And the fact that this fish is dead, that Ryan is dead. And, I am a Christian, so I like don't believe death is supposed to be part of the story. So it was really just an epiphany of being like, no, the bad guy here is the fact that we have to die. That Ryan died, that this fish died. And so that was a big lesson that I learned and kind of had to come to, a lot of forgiveness for my mom and for just all the other things that I had kind of I just kind of directed all my anger about everything towards her. Poor thing. She was just an easy target. She was there. The fish was a turning point for me.
Speaking about that anger around the inevitability of death, like that's such a scary concept, but at the end of the day, that's what's gonna happen. Like that's one of the only things that we're guaranteed in this life. And back onto the goldfish, I don't know where I feel like I've heard this before, but like this kid loved his goldfish, but like you said, goldfish die all the time. And like are the hardest pets to keep alive. So she would just keep buying him goldfish because like they all basically look the same. And like,
this is your mom?
No, I don't know where I've heard it, but
no, I wasn't gonna do that. I was like, we're not into like denying the fact that death happened in our house because you just can't do that. So I was like, this fish died with. Let's see.
Did you ever get any other pets after?
I'm not a big pet person, so no, I feel like it's such a huge responsibility. And I have a 17-month-old right now. So that feels like enough of he's like a little puppy.
Of a little animal, yeah. Totally. Okay. A moment of victory.
So this is an image of me, Wit, and Rory. And it is December of 2019. So 8 months after Ryan died, I decided that I wanted to skip Christmas altogether and kind of skip the whole month of December. I actually didn't skip Christmas Day. I let them have like Wit and Rory wanted to do Christmas Day with my family, but I skipped the whole month of December because I just didn't want to do the parties. I didn't want to do all of the
socializing.
I didn't want to feel like I had to get people gifts and do all these things where it was like, we would have gotten the tree, we would have decorated our house. And I knew I would have had to face the pain of that. But I was like, maybe I'll hold it off this year. It just felt like it was going to be a lot. So I was like, I think I want to get away and I want to get away somewhere warm. And I happen to know a lot of people in New Zealand, and December is their spring going into their summer. So it's very warm and so beautiful. But I still, the first year of being a single mom, I was sort of in denial about that. And I leaned on my whole community and I had a roommate and I had just always childcare lined up and everything. And I was like, I do not want to do this alone. No, not interested. But what happened was my good friend Lindsay was going to come with me, and right before our trip, she broke her tibia, like she broke her leg in an indoor game of soccer. She could not travel. She was like surgeries. She was bedridden. And so I had to go by myself, and I flew 20 hours with a 4-year-old and an almost 2-year-old, something I would never have chosen to do.
Yeah.
And I traveled alone, and I went to beach houses alone. I had some friends in New Zealand that like went around with me, but a lot of it was alone. I had to drive on the other side by myself, all these things that I just was never interested in doing. I was doing. And then I left that trip feeling like a badass. I was like,
Yeah.
I can do this. And I felt very emboldened to be a single mom and to raise these kids. And so I really felt like this is us hiking up in New Zealand on this beautiful property that we got to stay at. And I just remember feeling like the victorious is a good word for it. Like I can conquer this. I can get through this. I'm capable.
And it's those mental mountains really that are going to make all the difference, because if you're able to, conquer something that was so far out of your comfort zone, it makes you feel unstoppable. Like you can't, like nothing's going to get in your way.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what was the highlight from this big trip other than this, moment of empowerment?
Oh, so many. It's just the most beautiful place. And we got to stay. We have friends, and everybody seems to have like a beach house, which they call beach batches. So we got to go all around the North Island and stay at different people's beach batches. And there was a few nights in now I don't know if I can say the names. Anybody from New Zealand that watches this, I'm not going to say the name. Wherever Cathedral Cove is at, it is stunning. It's where they shot Chronicles of Narnia.
Yes.
There one day with my kids and just watching Wit chase the waves. It just was so fun. In a year that was the worst year of my life, I wasn't thinking about the fact that I was at a Christmas party alone. I was like, this is so fun. So yeah, a lot of highlights, but that was one, if I could remember the name.
Was this kind of... Oh, did it come to you?
I think it's hot. Yeah.
We're going to go with that anyway. I'm not even going to try. I'd butcher it worse. Okay. What do we got here?
Okay, now show me what you got.
Oh, okay, great. All grown up.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, this is our new land, and Rory is picking plums from a tree here. He was the baby when Ryan died, and now he is 6 years old. He's huge. And I think that happiness for me has gotten a lot simpler. Mm-hmm. And it's more the simple things that bring joy, and kind of the pausing to notice Rory growing up, and like when he delights in something that is a little bit more simple, like grabbing plums from a tree. I feel like that is how I feel about happiness now, where, yeah, there was a lot of joy in making that commercial, but that's a bit more complex version of happiness. And I think that, the longer I live and the more I keep going, I'm like, wow, the simplest days are my happiest days. For sure.
And just to be able to experience those little things is such a blessing. Yeah. It is. Yeah. And it's crazy to see, because in that last photo, the little baby boy, this is Rory. Same kid. Like, to think about where the time has gone is so crazy. Even looking back on the last couple of years of my own life, it's like time used to go by so slowly, and now it's just ripping past us.
Totally.
Is that the type of fruit tree that you can eat the fruit right off of, or is it like super bitter and gross?
No, it's so good. Those are the plums on our land. They're yellow plums. I don't know what kind. I'm not like a big gardener, but I am enjoying the fruit of whoever planted all the trees on this land.
And you're like, yes.
So the literal fruit of their labor.
Yeah. Totally. My auntie and uncle, they used to have a crab apple tree at their house, but I don't know if you're meant to eat crab apples because
Oh, yeah.
they're kind of gross and really
No, we
hard.
do have an apple tree and it's not that good. The
Yeah.
plums though, the blackberries, delicious.
Ooh, you have blackberries?
Yes.
I growing up, our house we used to have like wild raspberry bushes, I think, and they were really good. Way better than the store ones. I feel like
Yeah.
raspberries in the store, they're either top notch or too mushy with no flavor. Blueberries too. Berries are just the difficult ones, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Symbol of hope.
Yes, this is the day that I got engaged to Saul. So you'll notice that that is not Ryan from the video. But, it was a very hope-filled day. And I think when your life blows up, it is really hard to have hope for the next day. And to imagine a future without Ryan was scary. So I just didn't want to hope at all. It was too painful, especially at the beginning. But what was, as time went on, I found each morning I could sort of imagine my life. Yes, I think it'll always be sad that he died, but Solomon was really a surprise, and I didn't, expect to fall in love so deeply again. And this day was just such a day where hope was just in the air. It was thick in the air. And I wasn't sad about my future. I was like, wow, I was imagining all the new possibilities of this new love and this new family and this new relationship. So it was a great day.
Mm-hmm. I think this is such a beautiful family origin story too. And we talked about this earlier, but life is going to continue to go on. And you know, with all the love in your heart, what are you going to do with it after when, you do experience the death of a loved one like that?
Yeah.
So I think it's super awesome that you guys have been able to find your own way into this new family lifestyle. And it's just great to, be talking about the happiness that you share with your family.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here I'm kissing another man. So scandalous. I did Ryan for this one, even though I could also I chose to go down like the romantic love side, because I think, you brought me on as a widow, and the widow's whole thing is that they lose love, they lose their partner, their person. And for Ryan, I feel like love for us, when I look back on it, the foundation of our marriage and our love was really a great friendship. And so I think that is, to me, with romantic love, like, you can skip all the fireworks if there's no foundation of friendship, right? So all those extra things are great, but if you don't have that person that you just love hanging out with, that you want to binge Netflix with, that you want to check in on throughout the day, that makes you laugh, that holds you when you cry, that is your support, I feel like, to me, my take on love is that the friendship aspect of it is the most important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that friendship aspect, even in the romantic sense or not, is something that is so cherished throughout your entire life. Like, if you look back on fond memories that you have with your friends, the people that like knew you could spend that time with, that really hear your history and you've heard theirs, that's something that you can't take for granted at all. And you could just see in this picture the sort of relationship you guys had, and I think that humor is something that definitely is part of you. It's just, you don't need to be cracking jokes, but I can totally just see that that's something that is so core to your personality.
And Ryan was hilarious. So I'm sad he can't be here. He would do a much better job than I would here. He like lit up every room, and I was happy to take backseat to his hilarious humor. So I just feel like I'm trying to carry on a little bit of his legacy and his humor, doing stuff like this. And Yeah.
Well, I think it's working out. Shout out Ryan too.
Yeah.
All right. So, what did you end up thinking of this game? Are there any further things that you would like to mention about some of these different, sort of cataclysmic events in one's life?
Oh man, I mean, I thought this was a great game, and it's fun to see how pictures sort of symbolize these huge moments in my life. And when I look at all of this, I'm reminded of how amazing life is. And one thing that I say a lot is that life is both terrible and amazing. And so, really holding the tension of both of those things is really helps you keep going when you're grieving. If you just want it to be all sad all the time, I do think you could get stuck. Um, because you're ignoring all the amazing things that are happening too. But if you're on the other side of it and you're like, life is good, I live by a creek, nothing, I'm fine, I'm good now. I think that doesn't work either, because this is a huge painful loss that affects my everyday. I just sent my kids to third grade and first grade. I mean, they are getting huge, and Ryan is missing it all. That is always going to be sad. Tomorrow is our wedding anniversary, and we would have been married 11 years. That's nuts. And that's always going to be sad. It's always going to be painful, and it's always going to be, I'm always going to be mad that he died. On the other hand, I am so grateful for the beautiful, amazing life I get to live, and the places I've gotten to go, and the people that I get to love. I'm so grateful for Saul and for Reese, my 17-month-old puppy dog, baby boy. I'm just so grateful for all the good, but I don't deny that the bad is still bad and will always be bad.
And that gives perspective. Being able to note everything that's on the table and still being able to persevere and keep going and be thankful for what you do have currently. It's really easy to get bogged down in the negative side of things, but
yes,
just changing that mindset will, it's like tricking yourself. If you act like it's a bit better, then you'll start feeling like it's a bit better, and then things will just be a little bit better, right?
Yes.
So earlier when we looked through a couple different photos and whatnot, you mentioned your recent book proposal with Zondervan, correct me if I'm wrong, called You're So Strong. So with your future contributions, what impact are you trying to make with this book?
Yeah, so You're So Strong, again, it's the working title. So it's being published by Zondervan. Hopefully it will come out fall of next year, I think is the plan. So we're just really at the beginning of it. But it really is an invitation for people. By telling my story, it's a memoir. I'm hoping that people feel the invitation of holding this tension of good and bad, of not needing to have it all together and perform grief for everybody else, but to really figure out, that it's okay to be sad, it's okay to fall apart, and to hold also how beautiful and amazing and what a gift life is at the same time. So I'm hoping that it helps people that are actively grieving or like pre-grievers,
Yeah.
we all are going to experience something terrible. So I hope that, just reading my story makes people that are pre-grieving feel more equipped for when they do go through something, and feel a little less weird about the terrible things that they're going through and the way they cope with it.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a pregame for what's to come. But, you need some materials to be able to pull back on, to kind of know what you're going to get into. Like, that's with anything in life. So I think it is so unique and useful that you are creating a sort of guide for where to go when you're in a position where you don't know where to go. I think that's awesome. So I can't wait to stay up to date on how it's coming along. If you end up changing your title, whatever, whatnot, I will definitely be tuning in.
Awesome.
So I'd like to ask you my last final questions here today, Leslie. And if anyone has any questions in the chat, please feel free to prepare them at this time. So, looking back on your experience and your network, who is someone that you have met or, come into crossing with that you think would be a great person to have on this show that would have something very important to say?
Because my role does a lot of widows, the first person that comes to mind is my friend Melanie. And I can give you her contact. Melanie Grassi. She's a widow, but she also works in city council and is very involved with her community. And I am just in awe of what she's doing. And she's also starting an organization for widows too. I don't remember the name. I'm sorry, Melanie. But I think she would be a very powerful person to have on. She's come on Vids for Wids before, so you can see some of her interviews with me. But she's gone through the terriblest of terrible, and she's just very inspiring. She works to find something beautiful in each day to help her keep going. And so I think she'd be a great fit for this.
I think so too. And having that connection to the community and city council, that, pillar of society, I think would be a really great insight. So, thank you to, kind of doing this introduction. And I look forward to getting in touch with Melanie. So, what is something that you think we haven't completely hashed out that you would like to leave our audience with today?
If you are currently grieving, I hope that you're gentle with yourself. And I hope that you know that you're not alone and that your story and your experience is important and people want to hear about it. And I hope that you share it. And if you have not grieved yet, but maybe you know someone that is, I hope that you feel inspired to show up for them, show up with the plastic Tupperware boxes and make yourself available to them in those dark days, because that is so key to survival. And for everybody, I just hope that you're able to carry the good and the bad, the terrible and the amazing of life. And yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm just very grateful to be here.
I'm so grateful to have had this conversation with you. And I think that we've talked about some important things. We've laughed, we've cried, we've shared stories, we got real. I think this is a very eye-opening conversation for me. I hope the audience feels the same way, but gives me more of a perspective and, opens my brain to, things that other people are going through that I would have never thought of before. I would have never thought of that. And unless you're hearing other people's stories, you're probably not going to think about that. Okay, we did have a question come up before we head out for the day. So one of the individuals in the audience, their dad has stage 4 cancer and has been battling it for years, and he's been more ill lately, and she finds that people are offering to help, like mow the lawn and things like that, but why does it make her feel weird?
Wow. Yeah. First of all, that's terrible. I'm so sorry that he is going through that. I feel like it's normal to feel like you are a burden on other people, so feel a little bit uncomfortable by their support. I also feel like if people are offering to help, but they're not really, I think mowing the lawn is nice because it's specific. But honestly, the person that mowed my lawn, there's always somebody, one of these angels out there, he just literally came and mowed the lawn. And that was sort of nice because I didn't have to interact. I didn't feel like I needed to, say thank you over and over again. I think in those really tough times, what you're going through is extremely tough. I don't think you should feel required to manage the support or give thank you notes or say thank you. But I do think I encourage people to let people support you, because you'll look back and be like, wow, that at the time, you're like, whatever, let the grass grow. I don't care. But you'll look back and see how those things helped you survive and get through the day to day. And there's so much stacking up in our brains that we need to accomplish on a daily basis, laundry and bills, and it's really obnoxious when we're also trying to process something really painful. So if people can take some of that crap off of your load, I'm all for it. And just eliminate any desire to like pay them back and like show them your gratitude in some way. You can do that later. That's like, now I'm still doing that, thanking people for what they did. But at the time, it's just like, just let them mow the lawn.
And you never know, you could end up repaying that favor someday if they end up falling into a similar situation or just a hard time. You could always
Absolutely.
do that.
Yes.
And I love that social aspect of humanity, because obviously there's a lot of things that may make you think we're a hopeless species, but then just those small acts of kindness,
Yeah.
they remind you, it's like, you know what, maybe we are doing some good out there.
Yes. Absolutely.
All right. I would love to thank everybody for coming and having this conversation with us today. Everyone that had those sweet comments in the chat, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Leslie, for, coming and being vulnerable and, talking about the uncomfortable, making it comfortable with us here today.
Love it. I love the uncomfortable. Bring it on. This was so fun. Thank you.
I'm glad you found that so. All right, everybody, tune in to the next episode. We cannot wait to see you next week. Thanks so much for coming out today, and I hope everyone has an awesome weekend. All right, until then.
Perfect. What a wonderful episode.